Dalton, Riley, Wolves and Wagers. We got the NBA Western Conference Power Rankings coming at you. And the only props we got going are on my side. Rise sitting out tonight. You can see them below. But we're still going to continue with the props, so stay tuned. And obviously a huge win for the Wolves last night against Golden State. But I think we should jump right into this Western Conference Power Rankings, Ryan.
Yeah, tomorrow will be the East, but we're excited to talk about the Western Conference Power Rankings here. We're about a tenth of the way through the season. Enough games have been played that we can talk about a little power ranking here. So I'm going to start at my 15. I had the Utah Jazz. They got a minus 7.7 differential. They're giving up 121.6 points a game. Like, that's a lot of points to give up. So I'm going to have them at 15 to start off.
Yeah, and I got Jazz just one spot ahead of Portland. So I got them at 14-15, and we can now talk a little bit about the Utah Jazz. The only guy who's really impressing me is Lauri Markkanen. You kind of mentioned that Jordan Clarkson's probably going to be traded, so he's not going to be on this team. And then you're relying on guys like John Collins night in and night out. That doesn't impress me that much. But then my 15, Rye, is Portland. And the main reason, Scoot's out, Simons is out, and I'm just not going to rely on Ayton and Jeremy Grant. I do like Shaedon Sharpe, but I'm for sure not relying on DeAndre Ayton, right?
Yeah, it's kind of sad because Portland to me was a team that I was like, man, this team's going to win 20 ball games, but they're going to be fun to watch. But with Scoot and Simons being out, the brand of basketball has greatly diminished. So that I have them in my 14. You know, they're not far behind or far in front of the Jazz. We just have those two flip-flopped. I think we both have the Grizzlies at 13. 2-8 starts, the worst record in the conference. But to me, they're not as bad as the Blazers and Jazz. Just had some maybe tough luck on finishing games and whatnot. But Jaren Jackson Jr., Marcus Smart, like they got good ball players who know how to win over there. And once you get Ja back, you'll be better. But man, they are missing Tyus Jones, as you've mentioned before.
Yeah, and I just don't think the Grizz are in the Jazz Blazers tier. Like you mentioned, I think those two teams are in their own tier. And now we're kind of starting to get into this tier that has a lot of interesting teams. And that includes the Memphis Grizzlies because Desmond Bane is balling, Triple J is playing pretty consistent, and then Marcus Smart. But yeah, Tyus Jones is the big piece that they're missing, possibly even more than they're missing Ja because Desmond Bane is balling out right now, right?
Yeah, what a pick by him. I think he was 30th, I believe, in the first round in 2020. Moving on, I got the Spurs at 12. I was really surprised to see that they have the worst differential in the entire Western Conference. They're giving up 124 points a game, and they're 3-7. They're on a bit of a skid, but they beat the Suns twice. Like, I think they'll still figure some things out. Devin Vassell looks like he's taking over as alpha. Keldon Johnson is still a nice player. And obviously, you still have Wemby, who's going to just continue to get better, continue to develop into the guy. But I got them at 12 right now, but I'm excited to see where they end up throughout the season.
Yeah, and I got them 11, and you can kind of flip-flop them with the next team that I'll talk about, but want to talk about the Spurs. And obviously, their head coach, and I think some of their depth, we talked about it in the matchup with the Spurs. They got some professionals coming off the bench as well. And then you do have that 1A alpha player on the Spurs, which I think my number 12, the Houston Rockets, are currently missing. Like Jalen Green, he can go get you 30 every night, but he can also go get you 9.
Like yesterday. I think he was 1 of 12 yesterday.
Yeah. And then you just look at the roster. I'm just not a huge fan of their roster construction. Not a big fan of Dylan Brooks. Jabari Smith is a decent player, but he might not reach that potential that he maybe had at Auburn coming out, where he was the number 1 pick up until probably the night of the draft. But I got Houston at number 12, and then I do have San Antonio at number 11, right?
The Rockets are going to be a bit higher on my list. I'll get more into them when I get there. At 11, I got the Pelicans. Man, it seems to me, I don't know what their direction should be, like if they should try and blow things up and trade some pieces or what, but on paper, they got a really nice roster. It's just one of those guys ever on the floor together, right? That's been their biggest issue. So I got them slated 11th right now. They're 4-6. Their underlying numbers aren't the worst. I guess they're giving up 116 points a game. But man, I just like to see them all on the floor together more.
Yeah, and Spurs were my number 11, but then the Pelicans are my number 10, right? And we're pretty much spot on with the Pelicans. You got CJ, you got BI, you got Zion, you got Herb Jones. And I think if Trey was healthy, this could be a top 5 team in the West, but I got them currently slated as number 10 for me, right?
And my 10, and it's sad to see because I think they're on a 4-game skid, the Clippers. They look good pre-Harden trade. Now, I'm not saying that they can't figure things out, but it's kind of showing that it reminds me of the Westbrook trade to LA a bit, to the Lakers, where it was like, good player in his own right, but the fit just might not be there. And that's why I wish the Lakers would have made a move for Buddy Hield at that time. And it sounded like they pretty much had a deal worked out until LeBron was like, no, I want Westbrook. But that fit with Harden isn't looking good right now. They're 3-6. They still have a positive differential, but they're 11th in the conference right now. And they're best I can give them is 10 right now in the power rankings.
Yeah, and I just got them. I got the Pelicans at 10, like I just talked about, but then I got the Clippers at 9. And the main reason is you look at these last 5 games that they've lost on the road against the Lakers, which you can count that as a road game if you want to. I don't personally, but Madison Square Garden on the road, at Brooklyn, at Dallas, and then at home against Memphis. So these are not cupcake teams. And when you look at the talent, when you look at number 1 PG and Kawhi this year, they're going to be enough, in my opinion, over some of these younger teams that don't have the experience. And over time, I do think the Clippers will get better, but they're only number 9 on my list as well, right? With all that talent.
A team that I had for my 9, this team I had finishing second, I believe, in the Western Conference again or maybe it was third. I can't remember when I did my preseason, how I think the West is going to work out. I got the Kings at 9. A lot of that's the De'Aaron Fox injury, right? That's slowed them down. They're 4-4. They have a negative differential, but I'm not going to worry about them too much just because when you're missing your alpha, it's tougher to, hang around. So the fact that they're 500, they're probably happy with that right now, considering how much time De'Aaron Fox has missed. So I'll put them at 9.
Yeah, and I got Clippers at 9, and I got Kings at 8. And exact same reasons. They're going to be in contention, right, throughout the whole entire season once Fox gets healthy. But 4-4 without him, they're just kind of sitting in this weird spot. I got them at 8. And I don't think they're any higher, don't think they're any lower, just based off of last season. And I do really like the Kings still moving forward.
My 8 is going to be the Lakers. I think they're another team that's in a really weird spot. They're getting carried by LeBron again at 39 years old. Like, they're 500, they're 5-5, but they're giving up 116 points a game. They're minus 4.9 in the differential. Like, I don't know what the solution is, where you go for a trade or what. Like, you don't have a ton of assets unless you want to move Austin Reeves and package him with D'Lo's contract. Then it's not like you have a lot of picks to add on top of that. And is that even the best route? Do you want to keep mortgaging the future to try and make it work this year? So they're in a weird spot. Maybe they'll work things out if AD can start playing more games. He's stayed relatively healthy this year for them at least, but I got them at 8 right now. I'm just not overly impressed by them.
Yeah, and with the Kings 8, Lakers 7 for me. And a lot of that has to do, though, I'm not going to have them below some of these teams because Anthony Davis, I don't know if you just watched him last night. And even throughout this season, when he's healthy, and I know that's a big question mark for AD when he's healthy, but I think he is this year. And I just can't put the Lakers lower than 7 on my list, right?
My 7 is the surprise team of this episode for some people to see him this high. I had them tiered as a team that I was excited to watch that I think could make some noise preseason. And that was the Houston Rockets. They're 6-3. They have a +5 differential. They're currently 4th in the Western Conference. They're only giving up 105.8 points a game. Ime Udoka is coaching his butt off right now. And they just got a group of solid guys. But in your analysis with it, I think what is going to end up costing is, like you said, they don't have an alpha. They don't have a go-to guy. Fred VanVleet might be, I guess, like who you'd give the ball to if you needed a bucket at the end. And no disrespect to Fred, we're both big Freddie V fans, but that's not necessarily what I'd want, in a late game situation. So just not a big enough alpha for me, and it's too early for them to be any higher, even though they are 6-3 and 4th in the conference. It's just tough to put them that high when we're only 9 games in.
Yeah, I mean, I just look at them in the Spurs. I think the head coaching battle is on par, so I don't see any differentials there. And you look at the roster and the fact that you have the Spurs as low as you do and the Rockets as high as you do, when I don't see a lot of differences. And I think a lot of people with having that 1A in a Wemby and even a guy like Devin Vassell, who could be the best player on Houston, I think right now, having the Rockets 7 is just way too rich for my blood, rye. But I get it. They're exciting. And I think they might actually have more of a chance than what I thought coming into the season. But 7 in front of some of these teams, even like the Pelicans, with all that talent on that roster. And that you have them quite a bit higher than the Pelicans. In this West, I think the Rockets, I have them and the Spurs flip-flopped 11 and 12. And it's kind of like with the Pelicans and the Clippers. You can flop those because the rosters are kind of the same. You got a lot of veterans. It's an older roster, and the Spurs and Rockets kind of got the same roster. Great head coaches, but I still got them in the bottom tier of this loaded Western Conference.
Yeah, I just thought I need to give them some love, especially beating the Nuggets last night. It's not a small win. I mean, that's only the Nuggets' second loss of the year. They're just playing good ball. I'm sure it'll even out as the weeks go on here and the games go on. It's probably not a sustainable pace, but as of now, they look really solid. And the number that pops out to me is 105.8 points per game, as well as a positive net rating by 5.2. But that's enough on the Rockets. In my 6, I have the Phoenix Suns. They're 4-6. Not a lot to take from it, just because they're the epitome of a team that really doesn't care too much what they are as long as they're in the playoffs. And then they're going to be one of the hardest outs in the West, right? You got Beal, you got Booker, you got Durant. Not much more needs to be said than that. But I am concerned about their depth and how healthy they actually will be. And that's why I was a little curious on the Booker trade, just because I'm not ultra worried about their point guard position because Booker has done more than a capable job of filling in there. But I am worried about their depth. Like, they got some bumps coming off that bench and who have had to start this year because of injuries. So that concerns me a bit. I have them at 6. They'll creep up this list as the games go on. I'm not ultra worried about them.
Yeah, totally agree with you on that. And with Book coming back, that's why I have them a little higher on my list moving forward, but totally get it. They're top 6 team in the West regardless. And actually, my number 6, and I think he's right up there with Anthony Edwards, Devin Booker, and Luka right now, and that's SGA. And that's literally why they're number 6 on this list, is basically SGA, and it's that plain simple. I know Chet's nice. I know Dort's nice. I know Giddey is obviously not getting the minutes, but this just comes down to SGA is an absolute animal, right?
Yeah, I think they built a pretty dang good roster around SGA for everything he needs. Good shooting, right? Capable piece of scoring, good defenders. They're 5th in the Western Conference, and they're 5th in my power rankings. Big fan of Shea, big fan of his game. Their defense has gotten better than it was last year. I still think that needs to have a little improvement, but they still have a positive net rating. And when you have borderline top 10 player, depending on where people see Shea, I see him as a top 10 player as of now. When you look at like analytics, they love Shea, and I love Shea. So I got the Thunder at 5, and they're just an exciting young team.
Yeah, I see all 4 of those players I mentioned as being top 10 players in the league right now. And I just don't think there's a lot of arguing. They're coming into their primes, and they're going to be proms in the Western Conference. A lot of those guys for a long time to come going against Anthony Edwards. It's going to be exciting. But I actually will probably put the Thunder above the Warriors as soon as next week. But I still am going to put the Warriors at 5 just because of Steph Curry. I'm going to give him all of his roses. He's playing his best basketball. I don't even care what the rest of the roster is doing right now. As long as Steph is playing at this level, I think they got to be top 6, top 5 in the Western Conference, right?
Yeah, I actually have them at 4. They're 6-5. They're on, I think, a 3-game losing skid now. Their numbers are pretty good, though. They're like underlying numbers, so I'm not ultra worried about them. I was watching some of the post-game interviews after the Wolves game last night. Draymond looked annoyed at the presser, and I think it's just because he doesn't want to call out to the media, which is a good thing. But he's looking there at the box score sheet, and he's like, "Man, somebody other than Curry's got to score." And it's obviously not going to be Draymond. That's not really his role. But Clay, 5 of 16 again last night, right? Like Wiggins, another bag. I saw this. He got outscored by Podumesky. I got to learn his name because he's good. But he played 1 minute, and he legit outscored Wiggins for an entire game. So I'm not too concerned about the Warriors. They'll figure it out, but somebody's got to step up there. But track record shows that they're going to be a team that's dangerous, so I still have them at 4.
Yeah, and that's exactly the track record is why they're in front of the Thunder right now. Not plain simple. But number 4 on my list is none other than the Minnesota Timberwolves. And I know the Timberwolves are probably going to be higher on your list. I know you've had them in front of the Mavericks almost all year. And obviously the Suns are 6 on your list, and I'll jump into the Suns being number 3 on my list here in a little bit. But for me right now, it comes down to when you look at the 3 best players on the Timberwolves and the 3 best players on the Suns, I give a slight advantage to Phoenix every night, all day, every day. If you want to throw Rudy into that third piece or Jaden into that third piece, whichever one you want to pick. But we're splitting hairs. at that point because Minnesota is playing better basketball, but also Devin Booker's coming back, and they're playing Wednesday night. And it sounds like Booker might be back. So we'll get to see the head-to-head matchup right away, right?
Yeah, I got the Wolves a bit higher than you do, but like you said, you're splitting hairs at that point when we start talking about the top end echelon here of the Western Conference. Things will work out more as players are healthy. I just like the Wolves' depth a bit more. So I got them actually at 2 and the Mavs at 3. The Mavs have greatly impressed me. They were a team that I thought was going to be, around that play-in again, and they missed it last year. But, that you look at their numbers, they're incredible. They're 8-2. They're scoring 124 points a game. I think that's by far the most in the Western Conference. Defense needs to improve. You can't give up 117.6 points a game and expect to be great. But man, I guess if you can just outscore them, screw it, right? The only knock that I have on them outside of their defense is they just haven't played as many great teams yet, and that's not on them. That's just how the schedule works out. But that's why I had the Wolves at 2, is just because they've beat the Nuggets. They've beat the Celtics. They just beat the Warriors on the road. I think they've had a bit of a tougher schedule, and I like their numbers a bit better. And the Wolves had the best differential in the entire West. So I'll give them all the way up to 2.
Yeah, and absolutely love that, Riley. And the only reason that I have the Mavericks at number 2 is because I have Luka as my MVP right now. And to be honest with you, when I say splitting hairs, it's because Anthony Edwards is right in that MVP discussion as well. Like seriously, the top end side of things. I'm not even comparing Kyrie to Cat or Kyrie to anybody else on the Timberwolves roster, but I do just have the Mavericks too because Luka's my MVP, right?
And it would be disrespectful to have anybody other than the Nuggets at 1. We both do. Heat 2, I get they just lost to the Rockets last night, but they got a really good defensive rating this year. 106.1 points per game they're giving up, scoring 115 pretty much, 8.7 differential. You look at every advanced category and they're going to love it. And that's just because Nikola Jokic is like an advanced stat monster. And they're just such a tough out. But that's why if the Wolves see him again in the playoffs, they match up probably better than any other team in the entire league with the Nuggets. So that'll be exciting, but you can touch on the Nuggets if you want as well.
Defending champs until I see anything different. And as long as Joker is playing healthy and doing his thing, I got nothing else. So I'll kick it back to you to end this first Western Conference Power Rankings. It was exciting. I had a blast. We're going to probably continue to do this. I don't know if it'll be obviously like a weekly thing, but we'll continue to do this as we kind of feel like, hey, probably be a good time to get people updated. But I'll kick it back to you, Rye, for this after this great episode, in my opinion.
Yeah, so it's been a fun season so far. 1 through 15 teams have shown at least something that's worth watching, right? Like League Pass has been worth it for us. So tomorrow we're going to come at you with the East. I'm going to have some props as well. We'll both be back with more picks. We appreciate you guys as always for tuning into these videos.